Welcome to Life You Got This. Life You Got This, Misty Covington, guests, and any social media platforms used, including any references, links, or other knowledge resources, are for informational purposes only. Please seek professional assistance should you require it. If you believe you are in an emergency, call 911 immediately. Hey everybody, this is Misty Covington with Life You Got This, and today we are on our next series with real life stories from real life people. I don't know why I say that everyone's real, but I do. But our guest today is a very special guest. We're going to be talking about some really hard things. I'm going to introduce her, and then I'm going to say a few words, but our guest is Jennifer Gardner. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yeah. And our topic today is about domestic violence. And we're not quite sure what this is going to take us. We might see we might talk about all the sides. We're just going to see, but it's Jennifer, it's your show. But I do want to, first of all, thank everyone for joining us today. I know your time is valuable, and we love it when you choose to spend some of that time here at with us at Life You Got This. But some of the things we might say, nothing's going to be so detailed or graphic. Usually it's not that way. That being said, there might be some language or some things that might trigger memories or feelings. So please listen at your own discretion. And because it is recorded, you can listen to it as often or incrementally if you need to, but just make sure that you know the topic is domestic violence. This might not apply to you, but it might apply to someone you know that you might want to share the podcast with. And we would love that if you're able to help others through your own resources and finding us. But be mindful to get professional help if you need it, and find your people, find your support people if you are triggered, because that can happen. So, Miss Jennifer, thanks again for coming.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
I love it when I meet people, and we met last fall, and I say what I do, and I encourage people to come share their story, and you were very gracious because it's an intense topic. And I realize you're kind of on the other side of that, but I think and some people aren't, right? And so they might into this, and it is a journey, but I appreciate you sharing our journey with us. So I'm going to let you kind of just take over, and you can share your story from way back when until now, or whatever you want to do. But tell us what you want about domestic violence in your journey.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm usually don't have the floor, so to speak. So
all yours.
Thank you so much. I am so glad that you take the time, and anybody who takes the time to understand that there's so many different stories out there. There's so many different paths that we all go down that are unexpected, that we weren't prepared for, that we didn't know until we were there. Journeys that are, really difficult paths to go down. And it's very helpful to know that somebody else has been there. Right? That somebody understands you're never alone. I don't know if there's a lot of stories out there that I've heard where it's only isolated to just one person, right? So it's what you do is important in sharing other people's stories, because when you can connect, that's where a lot of the healing begins. And I know that was very true for me. I mean, and it does go back pretty far. I was raised in a little small town in Oregon my whole life until I turned 17, and my mother moved me here, and kind of lost my footing. You really, I was very, very embedded into the town that I grew up into. And when I moved here,
move into a big city, that's where do you find your footing? Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize the bubble I lived in. Right? And even I'm still friends with those people, and they're phenomenal people. But I think a lot of us that have gotten out of that small town recognize just how lucky we were to have grown up in that sheltered environment it was Friday Night Lights. It was just the perfect little town, right? And everybody was great.
They liked each other.
Yeah. So I think when that happens, you're not always fully prepared to move to a big city, especially as a teenager.
Yeah.
And so I moved here. My mom got remarried. He wanted to live here. There was really not a specific reason why they moved when they moved. And so, I went to school and I started working because I had a lot of issues with my stepdad. We didn't blend very well. So I moved out within about 6 months after moving here on my own. And I was still in high school. I was still senior in high school, and I was a cheerleader. And so I was trying to like juggle working and I met a guy at the place that I worked. And there was some immediate signs that he might not be compatible. So
so you're a teenager, you meet this guy and then move out, or you move out?
No, I moved out first, and I just met him where I was working, but I was very independent. I didn't have any parents like over me, talking to me.
Oh, you moved out to your own apartment.
Yeah. And I actually lived with a couple of friends from the restaurant that I worked at. They were older. Most of them were all in their 20s and had their own places, but had a spare bedroom. And, so I moved out and didn't have a lot of parental guidance. I mean, I grew up very quickly. My mother is disabled. And so I took care of her, and my sister is disabled as well. And so I had a lot of responsibility growing up. So moving out wasn't as catastrophic as it might be for somebody else at that age who's not prepared of what it's like to pay bills or, find an apartment or do the things that I had to help my mom do. So I was prepared to live on my own. And I think I knew from a young age that I was capable of being an adult. Yeah, being an adult and quicker than maybe some other people. Like, it's really difficult to become an adult, especially without guidance.
Yeah, I know 50-year-olds that or 60-year-olds aren't really great at adulting.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And I think that's what makes the journey of life so significant, because if you are the kind of person who can learn as you go, there's a difference between surviving, and marinating in trauma and life's not fair, right? You can't stay stuck there. You got to get through the journey in order to grow. And I find that happens to so many people, and it's really unfortunate. But I met my first husband at 17, and we had our first child at 19. And I know that seems young. It is young, but I was probably more prepared to be a mom. I was never afraid of being a mom. Even at that young age, I wasn't afraid of not knowing what to do. I knew that I would figure it out. It wasn't like something that terrified me. So even though the relationship with him was unhealthy, he was an alcoholic. He's still an alcoholic. I'd never really put a lot of stake into what kind of dad he would be. It was because I knew what kind of mom I could be. So I started pretty young with the idea of I've got this on my own, even if my partner is not there. And I had zero education on relationships or partners or healthy relationships, toxicity, nothing, no way of knowing. No way of knowing what was a flag. Like, I had no idea. I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, there was a handful of red flags. Yeah. Or at least yellow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, absolutely. And so I knew that he was a drinker early on, but when I met him, he was in a rehab. So I didn't recognize that he was a little older than me. So he was 21. I was 17. I think he was 20. I didn't recognize at that moment that if he's already in rehab at 20,
maybe consider
there's a problem, right? Like, because it takes a minute to get yourself to rehab. It was court ordered. So like, it takes a minute to get yourself court ordered rehab. It's not your first offense doesn't usually do that, but if there's a pattern, I know now, but if there's a pattern of criminality, and he's not a criminal, but things that are getting you in trouble, whether it be a DUI or a public intox or, criminal mischief because you're hanging out in the wrong place. And all the elements have alcohol involved. The judge is going to be like, okay, you clearly have an issue with alcohol. And send him to rehab. And so
when you're drinking.
Absolutely. And so,
he did, at least.
I had my daughter at 19, and then we had another daughter. We got married in between daughters, and then I had another daughter. And I very specifically remember when I got married, my brain was like, why are you doing this? Like, because I already knew that he would be, I already knew at that point, because I already had the other daughter, that he wasn't going to be a supportive spouse or parent. And so I was just, I was just in this phase of thinking that having kids would wake him up.
Mm. I mean, some people will hear this and go, what were you thinking? You're so young. And other people are going to go, that totally makes sense.
Right. For sure. Absolutely.
People who are like, oh, I'm 32 and I feel like our relationship is not connected. Let's have kids because
it'll connect us
closer. Or
I thought the responsibility of kids would make him drink less.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't understand alcoholism. I was never raised around it. We didn't have the internet back then. I didn't have the resources. If I wanted to watch television, it wasn't on Netflix, it was on a television. And so I didn't watch movies. Yeah. I had no influence.
Yeah.
I had no way of knowing what alcoholism even looked like. I just knew that this guy drank a lot, and I didn't like him when he was drinking. He was very, very verbally abusive. He was not physically abusive. He wasn't financially abusive. In fact, he barely worked because of his alcoholism. He was very irresponsible. The alcoholism made him very irresponsible, and it also made him very mouthy. Right. So,
well, yeah, it was like he was non-functioning as far as everyday skills, for sure.
Yeah. And his way of being in a relationship was gaslighting and narcissism of, I'm the man, so what I say is more important than what you have to say, without actually saying that. That's just how he acted.
Yeah.
So there was no compromise. There was no, and I didn't have boundaries. I didn't even know I needed to set boundaries for, hey, if you're going to drink,
I love that you're saying that, because you don't just know boundaries, you have to be taught. Like
right.
Stranger danger is a boundary, and people think even like killing someone, like we don't kill people, like
right.
Innately we know that, but you still have to, some people have to be told, right?
Well, and the fact is that there's a lot of misinformation about, taking something too far, right? Like people always think that there's either a way out or a justification for behavior. And so when my second daughter turned 1, it wasn't much longer after she was born that I was like, oh, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I've got 2, because, and I think the reason that happened was because the responsibility of having 2 small children, and then having a child for a husband,
child adult,
right? And he was the difficult one.
Yeah.
Not them. They were easy. My kids I've got very lucky in life. My kids have all been very easy, but it was something's got to give.
Yeah.
And I had grown very resentful of him, and and the verbal abuse was a lot of name calling, swearing. He wasn't a very loud person, so he wasn't scary. He was never scary. Yeah. He was just degrading
and a subtle, passive aggressive.
Yeah, and then he puts you down when you call him out on his own behaviors, right? Like, so, I'm a bad mom, or I'm a bad wife, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. And I remember sitting in the bathroom one day with the door shut, because I just had enough. I was really definitely having enough. And I remember thinking, I am not that person. And I'm tired of trying to convince him of who I am. Because if you don't know who I am by now, we've been together 7 years, and if you don't know who I am by now, I'm tired of trying to convince you otherwise. And that was an epiphany that I think.
Yeah. And you never will.
Yeah. No, you never will.
And the fact that he knows, I bet but he's a narcissistic tendencies. He knows that you're a good mom, but he's thinking that this is going to hurt you, right, or you're going to be humbled. But you're in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet, you're going,
yeah,
I'm not what he says he is.
I packed my bags. I was actually pregnant with my second daughter. I remember I packed my bags and I flew back to Oregon. I had family in Oregon, and I lived there for about 3 months, and I realized my whole life was here, right? Yeah. Like my village was here in Utah. Wow. So as much as I wanted to be away, I came back for that purpose.
Yeah.
So we reconciled
I have,
because
oh, go ahead, tell me. I was just wondering real quick because it doesn't sound like at this time, at least, you were kind of like going, oh, I get the drunken, here's who he is when he's drunk. I know differently. I don't trust him when he's drunk, meaning like, I don't believe him.
right,
Words aren't seeping through my skin.
right.
But for some people it would, depending upon who that person is. Someone being told they're a bad mom would be devastated, and their self-esteem would get worse.
Well, yeah, and let me back up a little bit because I did believe that for a minute.
Okay.
It wasn't until I had that aha moment where I was like, no, I'm not that person. But it took a minute to get there. And it took a lot of beating down of who I was as a person, and always trying to get him to understand that I was a good mom, that I was a good wife. That became exhausting, right? Because he was never going to believe in me.
You had this epiphany, like,
yeah.
But also something, and not everyone has this, and it's not good or bad, but it seemed like you had something, some part of you that was like, wait, you are managing the whole show.
Yeah. No, I was. And
there's no way. So this part of you might be saying, there's no way what he's saying is true. It's not true. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to be raising the 2 kids and a husband and working. You know what I'm saying? So,
and I do think that this is where my past comes in, where my childhood comes in. I had a very good childhood, in my opinion. I grew up in a great place. I had friends. I didn't have I didn't have any trauma as a child.
You won't experience that later, but when you have a great foundation, you see things differently.
You do see things differently. And so that's why some people, and people that may hear this, will be like, okay, well, I
wasn't that way.
Yeah. And so that's what we say, is that every single domestic violent relationship or intimate partner violence, however you want to slice it, a toxic relationship of any kind, and that we tolerate it, or that we allow, and this is terminology that people use to us. Why do you tolerate that? Why do you put up with that? Why haven't you left? Why, all the victim blaming, which back then was not really as pertinent as it is now. But the things that we question about ourselves, we do start to believe, I'm
narratives.
Yes. And I will say that my family and his family, he grew up with a very loving family. He had an alcoholic father, and they weren't together. So he had a stepdad and a mom that were normal. And then he had his alcoholic father, who eventually at some point, he was a wonderful man. He eventually got sober much later, but that childhood stuff had already gone on. And so I think that saved me quicker. I think I was able to see it. Yeah, I did spend 6 or 7 years in that relationship, but I think I got fed up faster.
And then you came back, right?
Yeah, I left, and I came back because leaving, I thought, I will show you. I'm going to leave you, right? I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to go so far away that you can't follow me. So that was a tactic that I did to stop myself from going back, right? But then I didn't realize I left my support system too.
Yeah.
And I lived with my aunt and uncle, and they were great. But it had nothing to do with that. I have a great family, and he has a great family. So they were very supportive. They understood what I was dealing with. They knew him. They knew he was an alcoholic, and they understood he wasn't just verbally abusive with me.
Yeah.
He was verbally abusive to every female in his life, sisters, mother. So it was
I'm like, but interesting, says the therapist. Only to females.
Yes, only to females. Yes. And he was pretty young too. So I think, and I'm going to say this now, I'm going to preface this now. I am friends with him now. He's been remarried for 25 years. He is still an alcoholic. He is in my children's lives with boundaries, because I raised them to also put up those boundaries.
Yeah.
He can be a little bit difficult when he's drinking, but he's not part of our everyday life. He's there, and he exists, but
because of the boundaries, you learned how to navigate having a very structured relationship.
You don't answer the phone after a certain time because you know he's been drinking. Or
black and white for you guys. Some people,
Right.
it really does need to be black and white, but not for everybody. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good illustration that it didn't have to be black and white.
Right. And he wasn't a horrible human. He was just he's an alcoholic, and he got really mouthy and degrading for a period of time. And I think he still has the tendencies, right? I still think that maybe in his current marriage or whatever the case may be, I'm sure that that's a dynamic. But we grow and we become older and we become less. And so for him, to give him the credit where credit's due, he is less than he was when he was in his 20s and his 30s. Now that but he is still, and I don't want anybody to ever think any differently. Alcoholics are alcoholics, right? Unless they are sober and been sober. He is not sober.
And then working on their stuff, not just not drinking is not the same as.
Right. So he is not sober, and he is well, almost turning the corner to 60. Right. So for him, he wanted us to live in his alcoholic world, but we let him live in his alcoholic world.
Yeah.
We're not a part of that world. We are on the outside of that world, but we're there. But he's got a phenomenal
this world and visit, but you're not going into it.
Well, he's got a phenomenal family that my children are very fortunate to have. They're very close with their cousins and their aunts and uncles and grandma, and their grandfather passed away and about I think it's been 10 years now, and which was devastating because he had changed his life and he was very close to his grandkids when he passed. But either way, I was able to see clearly that, and I say this because I want people who are in a similar situation to understand that, because I chose to keep my ex-husbands, both of them, in my children's lives, I understood that they were capable of being a parent, but not a spouse. And it wasn't immediate, wasn't right away. I didn't automatically be like, here you go, have kids every other weekend, because he was an alcoholic, right? So, and my kids were little, so they couldn't take care of themselves. So there was always a backup.
Sleepovers right now.
He was remarried, so I knew that if they went there, she was there. But I didn't also want to expose my kids to tantrums or whatever came with a fight with his wife or whatever. And his family, they live in Logan, and so his family was always around. My kids knew how to reach them. They knew how to reach me, but it wasn't frequent. I wanted them to build a relationship, but I wanted them to be safe about it. And they were very little. I was court ordered, right? So I can't just, he didn't get in any more trouble. So like, there's no paper trail that my husband's an alcoholic, right? So like back then when you,
and then abusive when he's an alcoholic. Yeah.
When you get divorced and the judge, I cannot, parent alienation is a thing. And the courts hate it. They really will turn on you if you withhold your children from the other parent, regardless of whether you think you have a reason. I understand that sometimes there are reasons for that.
Unless the court's saying, oh wait, like, because some people like substances that makes them dangerous. And usually there's a pattern or a trail that they can see that. Or I do have clients whose spouses can visit, but they have to be supervised because their mental illness is so strong or so intense, and they're not managing it, that it would be unsafe. But they're like going, okay, well, until these kiddos are old enough to decide if they want to have a relationship with this other parent, and we legally have to, as long as they're safe. And this mediator, this whatever, this monitor, I don't know what it's called, I can't think of it.
Mediator.
Meeting guardian or whatever,
guardian ad litem.
For the visits. My sister used to do that. She used to be a supervisor for the visits so that everything was okay. But that's okay. I mean,
I just don't want, my thing is too, is like my first husband became a functioning alcoholic at that point, where he has a really good job. He's built a career. He does not drink during the day. He drinks at night and on the weekends. And there's no justification. What I'm saying is that my dynamic doesn't necessarily fit other people's dynamics. Right. So, I did not, ever want to be that mom who took a father from his children as long as he was safe.
Yeah.
Right. So if he was not safe, there was a phone call. I have had police at his house take my children and wait for aunts to come and pick them up because he's fighting with his girlfriend or spouse or whatever.
Wow.
And my kids would call me, and they're probably later elementary school at this point, maybe 8, 9, 10, not 5, 6.
That was so cool that you did that, because it's actually just as damaging to witness things as it is to experience it. Like, I'm the one that's being hurt.
Right. And so, I mean, you know, they have really good, he has a very good, there was never a moment that I ever for 2 seconds felt that my ex-husband did not love his children. In fact, everybody knows how much he loves his children. So there's a really shifty dynamic when it comes to being a better person because you have your children in your life, and becoming a crappier person because your children were taken from you. So as long as we stayed on a level playing field and it didn't nosedive, we you know, there were times when I would meet him because we met halfway in the middle, and I was like, yeah, no, because it didn't feel safe. I felt like he had already been drinking. You know, I couldn't quite tell. He was kind of sometimes, now he wasn't obviously super drunk, because then I could tell that, but I was like, no, something doesn't feel right. And I would take them back with me. Yes, that would upset him. Super great. But if he's not going to call the cops, because he probably could have, that tells you that there's already a dynamic there that isn't safe for the kids. So I was very aware. There were, you know, he lived far enough away that there were months he would go without that weekend visit because he couldn't be sober enough. Right. But the kids were protected to like, they don't have a lot of memories of trauma from their alcoholic father. Yeah. So they have some instances where they remember an argument or a fight or this or that, but I tried to keep that to a minimum. And so moving forward from that marriage, I think I dated a little bit here and there, but my kids were young. I mean, they were 4 and 1. And
did this relationship create a caution for you? Like, oh,
you know what it did?
Go ahead.
You know what it did? I was 22, so I'm still young, right? So, or 23, I'm still young. And I was like, no alcoholics.
Sure.
That was my boundary.
Okay.
Because I still didn't understand. Yes, I did understand that he was an alcoholic, and I didn't want to be married to an alcoholic because he was hard to be married to. But I still at this moment had no idea what domestic violence was. I didn't even know verbal abuse. You know what I mean? Like, I just thought he was a jerk when he was drunk. Right. And so I still hadn't quite learned through that journey, other than my thing was he cannot be an alcoholic. So I dated a guy right after that who was an alcoholic. So I did fold right into that. And the minute that became very apparent, it was over. Like, I just was like, nope. Nope. He was a very nice guy. He was not a mean alcoholic.
So, can we pause for a second? Because I think that's great. I mean, because you think a little bit differently than someone else might think. And so for any of the listeners themselves or someone they know, like, there isn't a judgment, or we're not thinking that people are like victim-y or not smart, or they're emotionally not intelligent enough to see the signs, because sometimes, here's this alcoholic. This person's an alcoholic too. Maybe I didn't realize it till later, because alcoholism isn't the same coat.
Well, they don't show that to you. They want to date you. They don't want to show that to you right away.
Right. That and also, like, it looks different for different people.
He was a very nice woman. Very nice.
Most of my in-laws are alcoholic, functioning at different levels, and they all look different.
They're all different.
And so, and some does better at relationships than other people, right?
I mean, you can be a heavy drinker and still be a functioning, actually fairly decent partner, right? Like,
there's like a problem drinker to an alcohol. I mean, there's different variants, but it looks different no matter what. And even if you're like going, oh, I know they drink, there's a lot of, we take ourselves with us wherever we go. So the person who's like going, well, maybe it'll be different this time. Those are real feelings and they're still valid. And sometimes we just don't catch it, or we catch feelings before we catch on to the reality. And I just don't want anyone, and you're not doing this, I just want to make sure we're pausing. Like, it looks different for everybody. If you choose the same type of person with the same habits, it doesn't mean that you're bad and you make poor choices. It might mean like that's what's familiar to you, even though you don't want it. For you, it wasn't that way. But
it's classic. People don't show you those true colors right away, right? Like, I didn't know his past. I didn't
share my worst part of me.
Right.
Too, right. I get it. Yeah.
What I did know, what I did understand very early on in that second relationship was he had a very toxic relationship with his ex-wife over their children. They fought, and that was just something I didn't have, but they fought constantly. And there was a lot of anger still. And his kids were as young as mine. I mean, I think they were like a year older, both.
And I think that would be, I mean, you were younger, I get it. But that would be a reason, not because, oh, it's his fault they're fighting or her fault. She could have been a hot mess, who knows? But that's a good reason to say, this is a yellow flag. I'm going to proceed with caution, because I want to
animosity coming from.
Why is there so much anger? What's going on? Like, is that how all of his relationships are like that? Like, I think that's a good point, that like, you notice that going, okay, what's going on there?
Yeah. And I did notice that because I didn't have the same dynamic. I don't have, it's just not one of my personality traits. I'm not an angry person. I never have been. Have I had angry moments? Of course I have, but I don't, it's just not like a core of me.
It doesn't seem like you like hold grudges or anything like that.
No, I don't. I'm a very forgiving. I don't hold grudges, which can backfire, by the way, because you continue to allow people to do things that, other people might not, because some people, but with that being said, that didn't last terribly long. I mean, it did last a couple of years, where it was like, he was a very nice person. He was very nice. So his drinking wasn't mean. He was just sloppy and couldn't hold down a job. So, and he wasn't drunk every day. It wasn't like, but it was frequent. It became frequent enough. And I really did like him because he was a very nice person. And I really have this thing for people who are kind. Now, I could not put my finger on who was at fault of the anger in the prior relationship. Because she was messy.
Probably.
And he was messy, right? So like, I just knew that it was traumatizing for their children. So I wanted to be have a little bit more stability, tried to make it that way. But there was, I was very cognizant and very aware that he had a drinking problem at about 4 or 5 months of the relationship. I was like, okay. And I think I was confused because he wasn't an angry drunk. He wasn't, and he was not abusive. He was not verbally abusive. He was not emotionally abusive. He was not there was no domestic violent angle of any kind outside of the fact that he was an alcoholic.
And you're like, when I was a little confused, because I'm used to a person drinking like this, and this person's like this, but I told myself I don't want to be an alcoholic. So then I must have to probably back up and say that it wasn't really until I ended that relationship that drinking thing was like a big hard. Now I'm serious.
Yes. Now I'm serious. I don't care if you drink, but you're not.
Can't be a problem drinker or an alcoholic.
You cannot be. No, you cannot be. And we're going to have this discussion up front. Right. So once I ended that relationship, I just like my first relationship, by the time the relationship was over, I had stayed too long. And it was really easy to walk away at that ending point because I was resentful. I didn't like either one of them. I was like, you guys have put me in a worse position than when I started. You're not stepping up to the plate. And I didn't have any feelings anymore. So it was easier to walk away at that point because the feelings were dead. And so sometimes that happens and you get lucky and you don't have that heartbreak, right? Where you'll do anything.
To leave when I'm resentful and angry.
Yeah, it was absolutely a relief to walk away from both of those relationships.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I did not understand I needed to heal myself from both of those relationships before I got into my next one. You know, I think that has a lot to do, you know, I'm 25, right? I'm still young. And I didn't recognize that I needed the healing. I was the one that left, right? So how much damage could have been done? I was tricked into believing that I was fine because I walked away. I tricked myself into believing I was fine without healing the damages that both of those relationships had done. And even though the second one wasn't like it wasn't abusive or anything, it was just having to deal with an alcoholic is so exhausting. Yes. And, you know, you do tear down. I'm being a mom and I'm doing things that I'm having to do to try to survive. And I'm not paying attention, right? I'm just moving on to the next phase. No, I wasn't looking, you know, and even at 25, I was 25 and I'm not a math person. So this was still before internet, Facebook. So you don't have like ways to look up other people that are going through this or have been through this or, you know what I mean? Like you don't have those connections, right? And
there's no Google.
There's no Google. There's nobody to talk to about it because the people in my village were, and while my dad and my mom had a very toxic relationship, she left him when I was also one. So I wasn't raised in the toxicity. I don't remember any of it at all. My sister doesn't even remember any of it. And she's 3 years older than I am. So,
and you were saying that your mom didn't really talk about the harder things.
No, my mom didn't. Well, to my mom's credit, my mom did talk about her relationship with my father. They hated each other. I knew they hated each other. But I didn't understand enough about relationships to understand why, even as I grew and got older, why they continued to hate each other, right? He was remarried. She was in a long-term relationship. But my mom also went through several relationships. My mom is blind and she is completely blind. So there's no vision. She went blind when I was in my early elementary years, probably 6, 7 years old. I don't remember her with vision. I remember her with some visual acuity, but it was not enough. And so we still had to treat her without vision, right? Like it wasn't like she could drive or do anything like that. She'd never been able to drive. But so relationships were difficult for her because it's hard enough to find a partner, but to find one who's willing to take care of somebody who's visually impaired. So she went through quite a few relationships. I was not privy. My mom was very protective of the idea that we didn't live with one of her relationships until I was a teenager. So it was always me and my sister and her. And then she had a boyfriend, but he didn't live with us. And so I didn't really get to see any of that either. Right. So like I had zero influence of what a healthy relationship looked like. My aunt and uncle, I was very close with, but they divorced when I was like 12. And I didn't live with them. So, you know, I'm out in this world raising 2 babies, been through 2 yucky relationships. And I was introduced to my second husband through a friend of mine where I worked, as a matter of fact. And it was a Christmas party. Met him at a Christmas party and didn't, you know, of course, in the beginning of any dating, people are never going to be like, well, these are the issues that I have, right? Because let's face it, people
not giving you a resume.
No, people grow and they're allowed to grow. I think that where we get into the muddy water is understanding the difference between being a crappy person and being an abusive person.
Right.
So there are differences in people and no two dynamics are the same. No two people are the same. So you might have a spouse that sounds like my first husband, but you're not the same as me. So the way that you handle it is probably sterner than I was, or less stern, or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
the dynamics are never going to be the same, but you can relate to how a relationship makes you feel, how a person treats you, how we learn, and we continue to learn. I'm still learning. I was 25 years old. I'm still trying to figure it out. So at this point, my criteria was you can absolutely not be an alcoholic. And he wasn't, but I thought he owned his home. He was renting, but he lived in a home, and he was raising his 1-year-old.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, he's responsible, right?
Yeah.
Like the last 2 guys that I had been with couldn't be responsible because they were drinkers. So I was like, okay, he has a job, and he's
Single, raising his own kid who's one.
Right.
So he must have something put together. Yeah.
I probably should have asked is, why are you raising your 1-year-old?
Yeah.
Because it's very unusual for a man to be raising full-time their 1-year-old, right? And his family was around, but they were kind of quiet. They're not, he was quiet. They're just a quiet family, like, and I'm not, and I don't come from a quiet family. So there's, I just assumed that they were, but what I think I learned very quickly was that they were not telling me something.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking when you said they're quiet, I'm like, oh, sometimes quiet's and
that is exactly what it was.
Family being quiet. I have to turn a light on because it's getting darker in my office.
Are you okay?
Sometimes, sometimes that's a sign.
It was a sign, and I didn't see it. Right.
Often families are like, when we're hiding mental illness, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with it. But if someone's hiding it, means that person's not managing it, or a substance abuse, or an anger issue, or yeah.
And so
listener, please listen. If you start, hey, tell me what's your favorite thing or the worst thing, and they're like, oh, we don't say anything. I'm like, oh, consider.
Well, and I think this is where I do want some people to understand that this way that this went was not okay. When I look back on it, there are people that did not protect me.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was raising his 1-year-old, but the mom had visitation. So she would come and pick up the girl and take her. And she was also a very quiet person, didn't really talk much. His ex-wife, because he had been married before now, the fact that he had been through 3 long-term relationships, and he's 4 years older than me, but now he's going on 30, and he'd been in 3 long-term relationships. So now I'm 4. Yeah. Okay. I don't even recognize that might be an issue. Yeah. But his ex-wife, he was a mechanic. So his ex-wife would bring her car over, and I am still friends with these people. Right. So like, because you connect on a level of being married to the same person and what that was like. But nobody, not his mother, not his siblings, not his exes, ever warned me for what I was about to get myself into. And I feel like that's
and they knew.
Yeah. And I felt that was very unfair. I felt like somebody should have warned me. And
like a betrayal or loyalty to the
well, that's the problem. That's the reason why they didn't do it, right? They kept hoping that he would be different with the next person. Okay. We saw a part of him that was good, right? I think that's where we get in this weird muddy water. We see who they are when they're not abusive. Yeah. So now some people are absolutely just terrible, horrible people, and they're bad
all the time,
right? Yeah. But that was not my dynamic. He was not that way. He was only abusive when he was angry. Outside of that, we actually had a fairly decent marriage until he got angry. So let me back up a little bit. Started dating him. I moved into his house. I owned my own house. I had already bought a house, and I was, doing my thing. And
you were doing you well.
I was just doing me. And, I got involved. Well, I had gotten involved in a program with Salt Lake City. Yeah. Salt Lake City had a first-time home buyers program. And my first husband and I had actually signed up for it. And it was like a 2-3 year waiting list. So by the time it came around, we were divorced, but they still let me buy the house.
That's brilliant. You're 25 with 2 kiddos and you got your own house. That's brilliant.
Yeah. And so and this was 2001.
Okay.
right before the Winter Olympics, because I could. Does that sound right? Yeah. Because
Yeah.
2002 was the Winter Olympics and my house was up for rent during the Olympics. That's the only reason I have a
Yeah.
year in my head.
Yeah.
And so, but what ended up happening, and is I ended up moving into his house. But the first time he hit me was about 6 months into this relationship, right? And then a lot of feelings can develop in 6 months. So,
Yeah.
some
Did
people
you see like explosive anger before that? Like,
there was one moment when I was in the garage. He was working on a car and he was under the car and he dropped, had a wrench and he dropped it on his forehead and it cut his forehead.
Sure.
And I laughed. I don't know. I thought it was funny. How hurt are you? Right? Like in my brain.
You don't know. You went, oh dear, what happened?
Yeah, literally that. And
Yeah.
he got angry with me because he thought I was laughing at him and that he was hurt. And I was like, not catastrophically hurt, but that he felt like that was disrespectful. Anyways, he got very loud at that moment. And that's the first time. That was probably 3 months into the relationship. That was the first time I was like, I'd never been yelled at. I mean, other than my ex-husband was names, he didn't raise his voice. Right. So like, I was like, whoa, that's kind of, so I went into the bedroom and I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go home. I went and I did. And I went home anyways. So he called me and I didn't know him well enough to know that that was a preface for what was to come.
Yeah.
And that he had worked really hard during the first few months to not show that side of him.
Yeah.
And, he just exploded. He didn't hurt me or touch me or anything like that. I didn't think at that moment that was something he did. I still had no idea that he was a physical abuser. So we worked through that. And, about 6 months into it, I was living with him by this time.
Yeah.
And I'd actually rented my house out to a friend. And he joined a karate class of some kind, and they graduated, and so they went out drinking.
Yeah.
And he didn't come home, and we did have cell phones back then. We didn't have,
for sure. Yeah.
But they were flip and they didn't do a lot of things. They didn't have a lot of features, you know what I mean? So I would call and he wouldn't answer. And I'm living with you and you can't let me know that you're going to crash on your buddy's couch or that you
went out drinking. Anything could happen.
Right. Anything. So, I'd called the hospitals and called the police and I knew that he wasn't laying on the side of the road. At least I thought. Yeah. So he comes in at about like 7:00 in the morning and I'm pretty upset. I'm feeling very disrespected and that I spent all night worrying. Yeah. And I literally was like, what in the hell?
Yeah.
And he didn't say anything back. He just clocked me. He just hit me, decked me for questioning him. For questioning what he was doing and where he was at. I had no idea. I mean, I literally was just being inquisitive, but mad about it at the same time, right? Like, where have you been? What have you been doing? Cheating wasn't a thing I was thinking about.
Yeah.
I wasn't accusing him of doing anything.
I worried all night and my worries now turned into frustration.
Yeah. And I mean, and his attitude was that he did fall asleep at a buddy's house, but I still to this day have no idea whether that was the truth or not, because once he hit me, it deflected from his behavior of whatever he was doing. And I no longer cared what he was doing. I was like, oh my God, my oldest daughter was 5 or 6. And so she was in school. So it might've been a little bit later in the morning, probably maybe 9:00 or so. But anyway, she was already at school and I had my 3-year-old with me and we both just retreated into the bedroom. I remember I shut the door. I didn't know. I had no idea. I did not have a clue what was happening. I was like, what is happening?
It was dumbfounded, like in shock.
Yeah. And his daughter actually wasn't there because the mom had her. So there wasn't, I mean, I would have been even more mad if she had been there because you have a responsibility. You have a child here and you know what I mean? But that wasn't it. And so I sat in that room for hours. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to go out the door. I had no idea what to do.
Still like, I don't know what to do.
I did not know what to do. Yeah. Okay. No idea.
Yeah.
And so and some of it's a little bit foggy, but within a few hours, I mean, of course I have to leave because I have to go pick up my daughter from school, right? So at some point he came into the bedroom and apologized, and I'm so sorry. I don't know what got over me. Yeah. And because I'd never been through anything like that before, I was shaken. I was shaken for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also did not know that was intimate partner violence, right? Like I didn't understand any of that. I still had zero education on that.
Yeah.
So I didn't say anything to anybody. I went and got my daughter, and I told him, I remember telling him I was just so confused and I didn't know what to do and blah, 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 blah. So my house was occupied. I had a renter in there.
Yeah.
So I had nowhere else to go. So I just thought, okay, well, I wasn't like, oh, I want to stay with you. It was, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So, and I cared for him. I wouldn't necessarily say at this moment I was in love with him, but I loved him. I cared about him.
And how it works. And
we had fun. We had built a family dynamic that I liked. We had family dinners and we'd go to the zoo, and, he was good with my kids when they were little, really little. That changed over time. But, I just really didn't know. So I ended up staying, and it didn't happen for quite a while after that. So then I truly, I truly believed that was a one-time thing.
Yeah.
And however, I remember going to the grocery store. I went to Reams in South Salt Lake, and I ran into his mother. And I had glasses on.
Marks on your face?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And she said, "Did he do that to you?" She knew. She knew immediately. Which also wasn't oh my God, he's done this before, right? Yeah. Why would that be your first guess? If my son's wife came out with a black eye, that would be the last thing I would think of, because my son is so mellow, right? Like
I would. Did you fall down?
What did you? Yeah, but that was the first.
People will make jokes about it, right? Oh, did so and so hit you?
Yeah.
If only you knew.
If only knew. And I told her, I immediately lied. Because I didn't know she was a safe space.
Yeah.
I didn't know why she was asking me that.
You think there was a part of you that's still in shock, or a part of you that's like kind of embarrassed? Like
embarrassed. Embarrassed that I had a black eye. I'd never, ever been physically hit before, ever. Not even as a child. Yeah. So I was
so interesting, because I think most people who get hit, there is this sense of not like there might be, what did I do wrong? I don't think I did anything wrong. Did I do anything wrong? Or like, that was a big thing that happened. Was I part of that? Or this is embarrassing. And now I'm seeing people, and I just know for those listeners there that are, and the reason I asked that straight up is because I'm like, most of the people I've worked with, and years ago, like I'm talking 30 plus years ago, I worked in domestic violence, and that any kind of abuse happening to the victim, I'll say, is they almost always feel somehow not responsible as far as I made it happen, but somehow like I must have been something that made them mad, even though they're in charge of, and there's this embarrassment or shame.
Well, it was a dynamic of, I didn't want to explain what happened. I didn't quite fully understand it myself.
Right.
I understood that I came at him right when he walked in the door. And so, there was a little bit of a part of that was like, I have responsibility for some of this. He does too. Like, I wasn't like, oh, it's not his fault, but I wasn't taking the blame fully. I just didn't really think that I wanted to mention it, that it was him. I don't even remember what I told her. Yeah. I have no idea, but, that was just the beginning. And, the problem with him was he did not know how to control the red line. So whatever made him mad, and if he redlined, now he could be angry or annoyed, but once he hit a red line, that's when he became physically abusive.
He's called out like you can be angry and still in the window of tolerance, but when you hit that line and go over, or the closer you get, the bigger,
Yep. And you start to feel it, you start to understand it. So over the years, the relationship got much more violent, but it was every 6 months or once a year, or it was not a daily thing. It wasn't it was just I I sit back and, you know, the statistically, and I'm going to quote the statistic because I know that there's women that are going to hear this that have gone back and forth multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes about 7 times before you leave for good, as long as you've survived. Right.
Yeah, as long as you survived, right.
Right. And so I never for 1 second thought he would kill me. He never threatened me. He wasn't verbally abusive. He never said if I left him, he would kill me. He never told me anything like that. So that's very confusing too. Like there's a lot of women who have that dynamic where they're so scared to leave because he's threatened to kill them.
Yeah.
And they can look in their spouse's eyes and they're going to be like, he's going to kill me.
Serious.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know people, and I know of people who have died at the hands of their spouse who felt like they were dead if they left. And if they stayed, they had a chance because they could fight back and not die. Right. So there is this, I know that it's shifty, but
no, but you're right. It is shifty because you're on quicksand or you're on shifting sand. Like, of course it's shifting.
Yeah.
Like, and these cards, and you're like, I'm just trying to stand up. I don't
black and white. Why didn't you leave? That is absolutely the craziest thing to say to somebody because you are not in that house. You have no idea what they're being told.
I talked about this with someone else on a different show earlier this year. And I was like, there's not an answer to the why. The ask why is, I'm not saying people who ask why because they're curious or nonsensical, but it's a crazy making question.
It is.
There's not an answer.
I did a story with Huffington Post one time when the Ray Rice story came out, and his wife married him after he had assaulted her. And then after they got married, the video came out. So it was a delay. It was like several months before the video finally came out. And people were very angry with her because she stayed and got married after this incident happened. Yeah. And so we put together, I worked with an author at the Huffington Post, and we put together my story along with, I think 6 other people, maybe there were 6 of us total. And each one of us had a different reason for why we tolerated as long as we did. You know, I loved him. I thought I could love the abuse. I really did love this man. He was very decent.
We were together for how long?
7 years. The second one was 7 years. And I did love him. Like, it was a very deep love. So that was also, I kept thinking the more I love him, he had a very abusive childhood, very, 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 very violent childhood.
Which is surprising because it's not uncommon. No, everyone. This person's abused, and so now they abuse. And it's interesting that it would be long stretches of time. So I'm like going, is he controlling the other times, or is there something chemical that happens every few months that because you know how women have cycles, so do men. Yes. But it's not like not every 30 days. It's about every 90-ish days.
His most violent times were when he was drinking.
Oh, okay.
So he wasn't an alcoholic, and and he didn't drink a lot. But if it was the perfect mix of being pissed off about something,
that a hard liquor
with whiskey, it was whiskey. It was always whiskey.
It's always the hard liquor, I swear.
It is.
Always.
And beer. We were, we'd have beer when we had dinner or whatever. That was never an issue. But if it was the perfect storm of being pissed off about something, already having a bad day, going out to the bar and then drinking and coming home, and then I was the target.
And you were there.
And so and my children are getting older, right? And the violence might have been infrequent, but it got worse. So each time there was a physical assault, it was worse than the time before.
And were your kids witness it, or were they like, we hear the noise, we have to go hide?
They were both.
Okay.
They would hide, but they would watch as best as they could because they were terrified for me. And they knew that they couldn't, they were girls. They knew that they couldn't stop it. And
what happens is the kids, often it's the boys, will come to protect the mom,
right? And
someone really does get hurt. I mean, like you're hurt, like there's a death, a hospitalization, or it's not. It's also known where the kiddos will find weapons to
Yeah.
make it end once and for all.
Yeah, and we actually never had weapons in our house, but you know,
I understand these things happen, and so people like choose to stay or don't stay, you know, and it's your journey. If someone's who is experiencing this right now, but when people stay and there's kids and the kids are growing up in this, there's a higher risk of them trying to save the partner who's getting hurt.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
And then there's this, I'm going to get restitution. I'm going to end it for good, or there's going to be restitution. And
yeah,
it's like this. It's like your husband at the time. He saw the abuse. He experienced the abuse, and statistically, he's primed to be an abuser. But not everyone has abuse.
Well, I think he didn't want to be abusive.
Yeah,
I think that was a big dynamic with him, and you and I had discussed this earlier, and I've talked about him a lot. But I think that he didn't want to be abusive, and I think that everybody saw that. And I think now that I look back at it, I think that's why people were quiet and didn't tell me that he was abusive. He was abusive with every person he was with before me.
But he had some pent up something. Like here's the abuse. He had this anger, this feeling of whatever, and bless his heart, so to speak.
Yeah.
He did not go get that. He didn't work on himself. If he didn't want it,
no. Yeah, no.
I don't have it. Like anyone who has anger issues, like consider going to talk about someone. So
there was a little bit of a I can control this myself dynamic, and also people that are
all think we can do that.
Oh yeah, there's no crime against verbal abuse, right? So there's no dynamic there. But when you're physically hurting somebody, you know that's a crime. So you're not going to go and talk to anybody about it.
I think it's all a crime, but that's punishable.
Correct.
Right.
Good point. Yeah. So I think that, but my kids were still elementary school aged. So they weren't old enough to get in the middle. Nothing good would have come of that anyways. He was never physically abusive with the children, ever. He did shove one of them out of the way, but that was like, because he was coming at me. And so I was so caught up in this, not knowing what to do or how to do it. Yeah. You know, I started abusing drugs because he did. We both started using drugs in our 30s. And it just was easier for me to continue to use with him.
Yeah. We like to have partners sometimes.
Yeah.
Was it kind of your escape though from the reality of
it? Absolutely was, because he was not abusive when he was using. Only the alcohol.
Let's have fun together. Let's be closer together. This is the way we connect. I get you.
And you know, but unfortunately the drug abuse ended up being such a bad thing because we were physically addicted to it. Neither one of us are considered addicts, and but we addicted to using at the moment. And people who don't necessarily understand addiction most people are like, that doesn't make sense. It does make sense, because we never used any drugs up until the time that we started experimenting for different reasons, just to add some spice to our life or whatever the hell we were doing. I don't even know. But when I started to recognize that he wasn't abusive during those times, it was kind of like, yeah, I'll join you, because if I became on a different playing field than him, then it created a little bit of tension. So I was like, okay, I'm going to use with you. And so, but we could clean up just as fast as we could relapse again. So we went through that for, I would say, I mean, I'm 53 years old and I've probably used for 3 years of my life. Right. Yeah. So, and that was 20 years ago. So it's just one of those things where he, unfortunately, I cleaned up a lot faster than he did, because I had an employer and he was self-employed. And I had to go to work. Yeah. And so, unbeknownst to me, he continued to use, and he did a lot of drugs in a very short amount of time. And he did some, temporary brain damage, you know, your serotonin and your dopamine. And, he became very paranoid. So he developed drug-induced paranoid schizophrenia. Oh, it was,
that's a complicated diagnosis.
Right. And it was very complicated. And so then when he cleaned up off the drug and his serotonin and his dopamine were gone,
his brain kind of recovered.
It didn't immediately. Yeah. So
Right,
that
right,
was the
right.
problem. Yeah. So it takes a long time for that stuff to regrow. But
Right.
because he still had the same paranoid effects,
Mm.
it solidified that the paranoid and the hallucinations and the things that he was seeing were real because he was not on drugs.
Oh,
We did not understand that he had done the damage to the chemicals in his own brain, and it would take time for that to develop. He could regrow your own, but it takes
right.
years. So
Yeah.
anyways, that was a whole different messy thing. And so I became a caregiver. I became a nurse, basically, of a man who was schizophrenic.
Yeah.
And, trying different drugs, trying to get him to a doctor was impossible because they
Sure.
believe the doctors are part of the conspiracy.
Right.
Um,
Yes. I've had paranoid clients and they're like, I come to you, but I still don't trust you. But I
That's right.
trust more than someone else. And I go,
Yeah.
but
And
yeah.
he became that way with me. And at some point, I was part of the conspiracy. Then, as my oldest daughter got older, she was a part of it, and that's where I drew the line.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I made him move out, but there was really nowhere for him to go. We tried to get him into rehab, but they said he wasn't a lifelong addict, and they wouldn't take him. It was very weird. But anyways, so he kind of went off the rails for a while, got himself in some trouble. He'd clean up, then he'd self-medicate,
Sure.
with alcohol, or he'd use a different drug or whatever. And so, but I wasn't using at this time. And we went back and forth. We eventually reconciled, and then we moved back in. We lived in Tooele County, and we moved back into the county. And the abuse, the physical abuse, had pretty much stopped at that point because he was so paranoid. He thought everybody was watching him. So yeah. So
interesting. I think someone's watching me, so I'm going to manage, or I'm going
to manage it. So you knew that there was a level of control, right? But he was also very scared and paranoid all the time. He was hiding behind things, and it was a very traumatic couple of years. But outside of that, once during a moment that we reconciled, I got pregnant. And even though I wasn't really on board with this was going to be a great marriage, I wanted to have my son. And so I did. And I remember the abuse started again. I had a black eye at my baby shower. And, by this time, I think I was like 7 months, 8 months. I was really close to delivering at this time. And he had started using the drugs again. And so it was just a vicious circle, that I was caught up in, and his family wouldn't help him. Nobody would help him, but I knew the man had value somewhere in this world. And so I wasn't ready to give up on, but my dynamic of being, now I have 3 children plus his daughter still lived with us. So now we got 4 kids, all under the age of 12.
Oh, yeah.
And so life was crazy. It was hectic. And then there was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of, I can't do this there, but he really had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And he was kind of dangerous to the community because if he thought you were following him, he would confront you.
Yeah.
Now he wasn't like violent with the public, but he was
intimidating for sure.
For sure. And intimidating because he was kind of a bigger built guy and loud. And people wouldn't understand what was going on because they were confused.
Yeah.
So I tried to keep him out of the public as much as possible. Yeah. And then
on your plate.
Yeah. So my birthday, my son's birthday, and his birthday are all in March, and they're within a couple of weeks of each other, all of them. And so in 2006, my son had just turned 1. I had bought my husband tickets to a concert for his birthday, but the concert wasn't till the end of the month. And so we were kind of, if I remember right, we were living. Oh, we had relapsed.
Both of you, yeah.
Right after I had my son.
Okay.
And then that only lasted about 4 months. And then I was like, nope. Can't do this. I can't raise 4 kids. And
because I'm doing it myself, by the way.
Huh?
Yeah. because I'm doing it by myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so,
Present all the
he was always a very good financial provider. We didn't have any financial problems at this point until we would relapse. When we would relapse, we'd lose all our money because that's where it all went. And then we both knew that this was not the life that we wanted. So we'd clean up, and we had just moved into a new house in West Jordan, a nice house. And about 4 months after we moved in there, there were problems there too. He would drink, but he was still not healed from the drug-induced schizophrenia because he was self-medicating. His brain wasn't healing. And
well,
so,
not just that. I mean, there's that, which is a huge piece, but also he's still carrying around with him anything that happened from the past that was creating whatever it was creating for him, that where he was so reactive and violent. I mean, violent, right?
Very violent. He was
like
very
that history. Because here's the thing: you can move to Tooele, you can move to West Jordan. You always take you with you wherever you go, and that includes all your history.
For sure.
Includes all your experiences. It includes all the good stuff too. But it's like, it didn't matter what house you were in. And like, I am 100% hearing you. It was everything. It was the past plus the trauma to the brain from the drug use. And then there's the ups and downs, and he's never really allowing his brain to recover. I mean, recovery is a big deal. It's not just being sober. Recovery is my brain, body, spirit has to recover. And he wasn't given enough chance for his.
No, there was no chance. It was just not enough periods of time of sobriety, of not having delusions, or there just wasn't, maybe a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, but it just never lasted. And so when I got pregnant, I thought, oh, maybe he'll do it this way, again, that same thought process. But, and in a way, having children, in my opinion, is what has eventually led to, his recovery. Okay. So like, that was his reason to finally pull his
sober and stuff
and go sober. And we both stopped using. Like we both knew, and we were toxic for each other when it came to drugs, right? Like I had no willpower with him. If he went and got drugs, I did it with him.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's nice to know, because it's very, very hard. If there's two people who have substance use history, statistically, the chance of them both being sober is very, very low.
Well, we couldn't be sober together.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying, together. But if one person is in recovery and their other person's never used, the chances are exponentially higher. Like your success rate is like, I don't remember the statistics now, but they used to be like, 80% or more successful. If both of you are together and you're both in recovery, like 80% not successful.
Because it's absolutely unsuccessful, because one person would think about going and using, they would just bring it up, and then we were both on board. Right. Like, so
because your brain goes there.
Your brain goes there and you can't get it off of it. And
so good. Can't wait. Yeah.
Yep. And then my daughters were older, so that I had a built-in babysitter.
Yeah.
Which made relapsing after my son was born easier.
Yeah.
And so, but we were never meant, we both knew that we were never meant to be addicts.
Yeah.
We knew that was not the life that we wanted. But so we cleaned up and moved into a new house and started to rebuild our life yet again. And, we would relapse and clean up and rebuild and relapse and lose everything and start over probably 4 or 5 times over about that 3-year period.
Yeah.
Okay. So
the way is realistic, because people rarely hit recovery buttons and then stay on that track. They usually go up and down a few times. I don't know if they have to do 4 to 7 times, but whatever it takes is what it takes. But
yeah. And
time.
So he was, we were kind of at the end of our relationship, I think, for both of us when my son turned 1. We were still together, but it wasn't, I don't think either one of us really liked each other very much. Yeah. And so.
Well, you definitely didn't like who you were when you were together. Like,
absolutely not. Yeah. I didn't like the things that I was okay with doing. And I also didn't like the fact that I knew his core of who he is as a person is violent, which, like for what I said before with me, that is not my core.
Yeah.
I'm not a violent person. So like, if I'm drinking or I get angry, violence is not my immediate reaction, right? Where it is for him. So we walked on eggshells all the time. We did everything to not make him mad.
Yes.
To where he would not be that way. We navigated and felt like we controlled that narrative by not doing anything wrong.
And that holds its own trauma, you know.
Oh God, it was horrible.
Walking on eggshells, talk about anxiety and exhaustion.
Even my girls, they're adults now, and they still carry some of that, right? Like the trauma just sticks, and trying to not make somebody mad every single day, every minute of the day. It was when he would get mad from something that I didn't have anything to do with, and then he would drink, that became the problem, because his core is violence.
Yeah.
He was raised in it. His life marinated around it. His stepdads were very violent, and that's what he knew. Our reaction to being angry was to hurt somebody. And so anyways, we ended up going to that concert downtown Salt Lake City, and we had gone to dinner right before, and he was on Xanax at this time because of his schizophrenia. But just like with anything else, he started to abuse it, take too much of it. Yeah. So he had taken too much Xanax, and so when we got to the actual venue, he started drinking because he thought he could, because the Xanax is going to knock you out. Yeah. So he thought, if I drink, it'll keep me awake. But the bar that we were at had multiple levels, and there are bars on each level, and they weren't keeping track of how much he was drinking up and down. And I'm sitting in my seat, waiting for the concert to start. And it wasn't like a normal concert venue. It was their very first concert that they had put on there. And so he was gone forever. And so I finally decided to go look for him anyways. I found him at the bathroom with security. And he was very, very sick because he had mixed the two. And so the security was like, who does this man belong to? Some girl like me. And I was like,
yeah, better go to the hospital or whatever.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, he's not. I said, I know that you probably just met him here, but he is not with you. He's actually my husband, because this girl was waiting at the bathroom with him. And I was like, yeah. Anyways. And I said, trust me, girl. You don't want him to be yours.
Yeah. What are you using that you're mistaking this for your guy?
I just figured that he'd been gone for like an hour, that he just met somebody there and they hit it off or whatever.
Now we're engaged.
Yes. Right. And so I was like, no, he's fine. So they actually made us leave because he was a danger. And it was a concrete building. He could fall down the stairs. He was sick.
Yeah, all the reasons. Yep.
So we left. We get about a block down the road, and he's sick. He's going to throw up. So I reach across him and I open the door, and I go to turn him, to push him out so that he doesn't throw up in my car. But he was so far gone at this moment that it was fight or flight for him. He thought the car was still moving, and I was pushing him out of a moving vehicle.
Oh.
Because everything's spinning, right? He doesn't know what's happening. He also immediately
has paranoia.
He goes back into the paranoia state of somebody trying to kill him. Somebody's after him, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And his immediate reaction was to hit me. So he comes back around, clocks me right here. I knew immediately that my bones were broken, because it was a pretty hard hit. Yeah. But at that moment, I am the everything that has ever chased him in his mind.
Yeah.
And he is obliterating me. Like
it's not your face, it's the whole thing.
I didn't know if I was going to survive. You know, I was being strangled. He had broken.
That you went to the hospital?
Huh?
Did you go? This is the one that he almost knew with? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then I end up in the back seat. He's got his hands around my throat. I know I'm downtown. I know there's people somewhere, but it's like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I was able to roll down the window. I couldn't get out the doors because the minute I would open the door, he would pull me back in. So I rolled down the window. I could hear people, and I kicked him off of me, and I started screaming, and they heard me. And so they came over, they pulled me out. They detained him for the police. I end up at the hospital, and I knew at that moment that my life was going to change.
Mm.
You know,
It's got to.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I hit the news. I mean, we were on the news. Not that, I mean, even back then, this was 20 years ago, you had to be watching the news.
Yeah.
We didn't have websites. We didn't have social media. We still didn't have that stuff. You know, I think we had the internet, but it wasn't like what it is now. Right.
Sure.
So, I'm laying in a hospital room, and the whole left side of my face and my nose is shattered. And, they're very delicate with me, because, they were mortified for me.
Yeah.
He had been biting me all over. I mean, he just went, ballistic.
Yeah.
I have a lot of defensive wounds because I'm not going to go down. I'm going to fight. Right.
Well,
I wasn't sure.
You don't want to die. You're like going,
I want to die. I did not know if I was going to make it out of there alive.
Yeah.
I remember in those moments, that I remember asking God, and I'm not a particularly religious person, but I'm spiritual. And I remember saying to him, if you get me out of this, I will change my life. I will do what I'm supposed to do in society as a contributing member, as an adult, as a mom, as a whatever that looks like.
Well, up until a certain time, you were already doing that.
I was, but I didn't realize the damage that I was doing to my children by the witnessing of all that abuse. My thing was he wasn't abusing them.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's what it is for lots of people, and people
know
this. And I'm not saying this as a threat, or I'm just saying, like, when you were telling me your story, I'm like going, wow, there's a part of me that's thinking you're fortunate, because if they were going to school and told stories, even if they're not touched, the witnessing, they'll pull kiddos out just for the witnessing of it.
My daughters are very
dangerous for them. Yeah.
My daughters are quiet. Well, my oldest daughter was like a busybody, but she wasn't very talkative.
Well, listen, she already knew the eggshell run.
Right. So absolutely. And
tell anybody. I'm just saying, like, people don't always think that. Sometimes our logic brain goes, well, but they're never hurt. He's never, or she's never yelling at them.
That would go with me all the time.
It's the same type of trauma, even if they're not touched. So I'm just saying that too, like you said, no, my kids still remember, and there's still kind of some eggshelly tips they'll do, even if they don't need to, because they
recognize it's a trauma response.
Yeah, like it can't get off me all that easily. It takes time.
It's time.
Everything off.
When I was in the hospital, somebody said to me, and I don't remember who it was for the life of me, somebody said, build a new past. Because the past that I had given them was full of trauma. But somebody's like, my oldest daughter was 13, my youngest daughter was 10, and my son was only 1.
Yeah.
So he doesn't remember anything, right? But they were like, build a new past. They're still young. Build a new past. This is your opportunity to give them good memories. To do the things that you couldn't do when you were in that marriage. Because he did control the narrative. They couldn't be in dance. They couldn't be in choir at school. They couldn't do the things.
The trauma passed, but now they have 2. So they know how it could be and how it was at one time. And then they can also hopefully use those experiences to build their future, and also have,
But they have a very good indication of what is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like they absolutely, that is something that they have not gone down those particular patterns. Have they been in unhealthy relationships? Yes. But not abusive, just unhealthy and not compatible people. Right. So you go through that. And then, my oldest did go through a relationship that was verbally abusive. And she tried to keep convincing this person that she was just like what I had done, but she kept a lot of that from me. So I wasn't aware of how bad that would get inside their own home.
And that could be because of what she witnessed, but it also could be that's just her style too, because
she's very private.
you had none of that in your history, and you were still doing the same thing. So just because you witness abuse doesn't mean you're going to accept it or follow into it. And just because my childhood was amazing and hunky-dory doesn't mean that I'm not going to be hard things happen, right?
And that's what's so imperative for people to understand is, I knew at that moment that my life was going to change. I did. I was very aware. I was in that hospital room. I had
Yeah.
many quiet nights by myself.
Liked for you.
Yeah. My first husband's family came down and got my girls. And, you know, because he went to jail. And so the mom came and got, you know, her daughter, who was at that time, she was like 7 or 8 years old. And so everybody just split. It was a split. It was an immediate split. And they held on to the girls while I
Healing.
tried to physically heal. I had to have surgery, and so I stayed in the hospital until I had surgery, and then you have to recover, right? So
Yes.
I'd lost my job, of course, and didn't know what in the world I was going to do. I had a very big village of people that stepped in and packed my house, moved me into an apartment. I was receiving assistance through Utah Office for Victims of Crime, which is a very important tool that a lot of people don't know is there.
Yeah.
And they helped pay for deposits and rent. And
it's an amazing resource. Most larger cities will for sure have that. Smaller cities, not necessarily, but there's always a hotline people can call.
Well, in the state of Utah, it's a state thing. So if no matter what city you're in, if you've been,
I'm just saying, like, some people listen that aren't here local. They might,
yeah, for sure. I mean,
I'm just saying that, like, but no matter where you're at, your police stations, a hospital, therapists, they will have resources where they'll be able to help you get in touch.
And they will, and it's there for that reason, right? That's why we have it. And so I know that there's a lot of people that they do not know that office exists. They came and visited me in the hospital. That I was referred to them and they came to me. But just like any other government ran thing, they have funding that they get grants from. So they don't have an endless amount of funding. So they don't advertise that they're there. You have to find out.
And they're there to get you started and help you become independent, because that's the goal. Yeah.
And it was very simple for me to accept it, because I knew that his life was going to change because he was going to go to prison. And I knew that I needed to figure out how to stand up on my own 2 feet. We were financially, I worked, he worked. We didn't really have a financial aspect in this part. My first marriage, yes, because we were young and he didn't work, and I was.
As long as you two weren't using drugs and spending all your money, you were fine.
That's right. And at this point, we had cleaned up from the drugs and we were back on track, right? And so I had a job and he had his job, and so I was faced with a future without a job, and I was broken all over.
Literally.
Literally. I had patches on my face, and it was painful to metal screws and plates, and it was one of those things where I wasn't sure what that looked like, right? I did not know. And it doesn't come with a answer. It comes with the desire to keep one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And a lot of setbacks.
Yeah.
Because I've always told people this: if you take 10 steps forward, but you take 7 steps backwards, you still took 3 forward.
Yeah. It doesn't ever erase your progress. It just means you have to do it again.
You have to do it again, and maybe do it differently, or whatever that looks like. I worked 3 jobs. But what we felt was a freedom.
Yeah. And some safety, I imagine.
Safety. We weren't hiding. We weren't worried. We weren't walking on eggshells.
I got to breathe.
Yes. My daughters became cheerleaders, and my son went into baseball, and we were living again. It was stressful. The kids didn't drive yet. They were still young. And, I would call up coaches and moms and be like, hey, can somebody pick up my kid? And, I found after school programs for my son. And, you do the things that you have to do, but you cannot not do anything.
Right.
And I hate this saying, but I love the saying, nothing changes if nothing changes.
It's true.
It's so true, but it's so cliche. And you recognize immediately that if I'm not going to do this, nobody's going to do it for me. I didn't have people doing things for me. I had them helping me do it for myself. So, I couldn't work for I think it was the first 4 months, right? So I had somebody else covering my rent. The crime victims covered my rent for a while. And then, I was able to start climbing, but I was surviving, right? I'm working all these jobs. My daughter's babysitting.
Yeah. The crime victims also, they typically do this. They'll actually also give you a therapist or a counselor to work with so that you can,
Well, yes, they do offer that, but my personality, my dynamic is a little different than other people. I
wouldn't if they offered it, so people know.
They do offer it. I consider myself to be an extremely resilient human. I think it's probably just from being raised and taking care of disabled people. You know what I mean? So but I thought I didn't need all that at the time. At the time, right? I don't. Where am I going to put that into my schedule, right? I'm already stressed out. My daughter's cheerleading schedule was at 6:30 in the morning, and then so we drive up there and drop her off, and then my other daughter had a different start time than my son had because he was in kindergarten eventually. It was just everything was shifty all the time, and I literally didn't see any progress while I'm in it.
Yeah.
While I'm in the depth of it, right? I still, not only that, I have my financial world fell apart.
Yeah.
He went to prison. I didn't have any money. I had no child support. My first husband was terrible about paying child support. He eventually started, but that wasn't at that time. Yeah. And, so I'm not getting any support for any of my children, even though, it wouldn't have been a lot back then anyways. It would have been something. I had constables at my door. I had, I ended up filing bankruptcy so that I could move forward because that is what that is for. It is, I didn't have any medical bills because
pause on things so you can get them. Yeah.
I didn't have any medical bills because I was on Medicaid.
Yeah.
Between crime victims and Medicaid, they covered everything. I felt very blessed in that aspect, right? Legal aid helped me with my divorce.
Well, and that's what those resources are supposed to be for, people who are seriously needing it, not abusing it. I think that's great. I love that was there.
And that's, fast forward, I eventually, so at about 8 years after this happened, he's already out of prison and he's doing his thing and fixing his life. And I'm, doing mine. And he's actually a phenomenal father, thankfully. But he...
A lot of work to get there.
We did a lot of work to get there. But he, we're a lot older now. And so I'm 8 years into it. And my daughter, my youngest daughter, the middle child at this point, she was in high school and she was in an adult roles class and they needed somebody to come in and speak to their class about domestic violence. Mm-hmm. So she asked me if I'd be willing to do it. I'd never done anything like that, but I was like, sure, I'll come in. So I had ordered my photos from the police department. I'd never seen them before from that night.
Holy crap. Holy reality right there.
Yeah. When I got them, I was like, wow, I forgot that that's what I looked like because it was really a little shocking. And so I also recognized that I had something that a lot of other people don't have that start to advocate. They don't have photos. They don't have something that's going to grab somebody's attention that this could happen to you.
Yeah.
You hear it, but until you visualize it, it's not as prevalent that, everybody's situation can end a certain way. I think that was really the thing for me was I had no idea I could die in that relationship.
Yeah.
It never crossed my mind. I know he was violent, but it never crossed my mind that he would kill me.
And what's so crazy is I was working with this one person years ago and he was abusive and verbal, emotional, financial, by the way. Yeah. This person didn't even have a key to their own house. They would have to use the garage door code. And if he was upset, he would lock them out of there. So eventually they decided to leave. But at one time she was telling me before she chose to leave, and I wasn't telling her to leave, but it had to be so, where I said, hey, well, why for fun? Why, let's do a questionnaire. So there's like these 3 questionnaires. And she goes, oh my gosh, I really am in an abusive relationship. And all the signs were there, because we're thinking, oh, why would I ever die? Or they're never physical with me. But I'm like going, yet, I mean, because if this is the pattern and it is escalating to where, oh, you were drugged, you were drugged, and you woke up in, a nightie, lingerie, and you're like going, what's going on, and all those things. I'm like going, and he had done some emotional warfare, where I'm like going, he was actually saying, if you ever, then I will, without saying, if you ever, then I will.
Yeah.
By leaving weapons around, like,
oh, sure, subliminal messages.
Yes, yeah. And so I'm like going, it's not violent till it is.
No. I joined a organization called Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. I went to my first retreat. My middle daughter was 18 I left on her 18th birthday. They really wanted me to do something like that. They were like, it's a survivor's retreat where you get to go through some classes and some healing and exercises that are super important.
Well, there's also people who are similar, so you're not by yourself. And
well, I didn't know there was anybody out there that had been through what I had been through.
Right.
Because I had seen a story that came across my timeline. This is how I got involved with Break the Silence. A woman's story from Florida had come across my timeline where she had been stabbed 32 times and survived. And, there's plenty of documentaries out about her now, but she was advertising is not the right word, but this retreat, Break the Silence, please go. And if you've been in this, do it. So, I clicked on the link and applied.
Yeah.
And it was a free retreat. I just had to get myself there. And California's not that far, right? So like, I wasn't really worried about that. Yeah. And my son is now 10 or whatever. My ex-husband was in a much better place and remarried. So I knew I could leave him with them. Yeah. And so I went to this retreat. I met women, connected with so many women. It was absolutely breathtaking to me that we were all there. We had made it there, because there is a survivor's guilt part when we see. I work in news now, and I've written and reported on many, many stories of women who did not survive, and some men as well. But you get there and you're just like, we have made it. We've made it to the other side, alive, and it gives you an extra sense of pride and accomplishment. And then it's uphill from there. But I will tell you that the most vital part of rebuilding my life became apparent with the connections that I made through that organization, because I'm still, and this was 16 years ago. Yeah. And I am still connected to some of these women. We get together once in a while. We all live all over the country. We get together, and I talk to one of them almost daily. I've never remarried. I don't want to. And I went back to school, got my bachelor's degree. I found a career in media, and all of this happened almost at the exact same time. It was very strange. I went back to school. When I got back from that retreat, I was like, what do I want to do with my life? I actually enrolled in communications. I ended up changing to journalism and criminal justice, but I landed by accident. I landed a job in the media, which I did not know was a skill of mine. That I could do well until I got there, right? So everything started to fall into place. But you know what? For the first 9 years, it was very messy. That recovery, that journey, that moving forward was very, very messy. It's still a little messy, but it's not as messy as it was. But, my son has grown. He joined the military, and that's a whole nother experience that I'm grateful that I was healed and in a better place when he did do that, because I needed to be there for him. And, as my daughters grew up and they're in their 30s, and we recognize triggers when they happen. Certain movies, they went and saw This Is Us. And is that what it's called?
Yep. I know what you're talking
I did
about.
not watch the movie because I felt like I had already lived that life. I'd
Yeah.
already lived
I mean,
through doing that.
I think it was meant to help, but they do warn like, hey,
Yeah. I don't get
straight out,
triggered
you
in
know
this.
it's there. You don't
Yeah.
see
And I
it,
don't,
you know.
I don't get triggered in the sense of, watching or talking. I just wasn't interested in watching what I felt was like my own life story. And
Yeah.
so I just didn't. And the girls, they went and saw it and they said, you probably wouldn't like it. And I was like, yeah, because I might pick it apart a little bit,
Yeah.
but I, I I had a moment when I first started in media. I worked for an organization and they had a guy that worked there that was very aggressive.
Mm.
And this was like 2014. And I hadn't been around somebody like that since my last husband. Right.
Mhm.
And when he put a hole in the wall, it was triggering for me. And
Oh,
I was like, no, I
sure.
can't do it. Yeah. So I moved to a different media outlet because the one that I worked for at the time wasn't a corporation. It was a small online media outlet. And it was the HR was the wife. And although I really enjoyed it, there was no protections. And their attitude about this guy was just deal with it.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing. So when
But in the domestic violence world, if a spouse punches the wall, they would consider that violent. It's intimidation,
yeah.
and this could have been your face. And not only that, but like it would be considered abuse if, oh, we're having this whatever, and the abuse of a partner destroys things that you love.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? People don't think because they go, it's an object. And I go, no, that's all abuse. That's all.
It is. It is. I mean, and my ex-husband, my first ex-husband was really good at destroying things. He liked to destroy my stuff, and that, he was verbally abusive, and then he would like.
It's a different type of physical abuse, but yes.
It is. Yeah, and so I think that, as I get older, I'm empty nested now. Everybody's gone, and there are opportunities out there to date or to do those things, but my brain and my body says, your presence in my life has to feel better than my solitude. And because I didn't do that before, right? I didn't recognize that the solitude was so amazing. And it was the partners that I was picking that was creating that friction in my life. But once I got stable and on my feet, I was never, I wouldn't say I was financially stable until about 45. And then I could actually like not cry when I'd get paid and I'd have to, you know what I mean? Like, and that was, but there is a dynamic of people who stay in relationships for the finances.
Yep.
Right? Because they don't know how to do that. And, I didn't even go to college until I was 40.
Yeah.
And so and it took me 10 years to get a bachelor's degree because I couldn't go full time. Right.
Yeah.
But I just kept going. And then I'd take a semester off if it was too much or had to work. And then I just kept moving forward and forward. And even if there was a setback, I filed bankruptcy in the last 20 years. I filed 3 times. I have filed 7 and I filed 2 7s and a 13. Now that bankruptcy, the last one I filed is no longer on my credit. So I get that part of my past is actually gone and I don't need to do that now. But you rebuild or you start to get to a level playing field and then something happens.
Yeah.
And then, and you just cannot give up. Have a good cry. Be angry for a minute.
I feel all the feelings. Yeah.
Don't pretend that it's not happening because it is happening. But one of the things my daughters have said to me that they remember me saying so often was, we will figure it out. Yeah. My daughter was an all-star cheerleader and it was incredibly expensive. And I was like, I cannot afford this. So I worked out things with, I take my tax return and pay for the whole year in advance. You know what I mean? Like there were ways we do fundraising or whatever, but life is about figuring out how to get through the journey.
Yeah.
And another saying that is really common is, it's not what you go through, it's how you go through it.
Yeah, because here's the deal, like everyone's on a journey, even if they don't think they are.
Oh, for sure.
So if you think you're standing still, you're really not. If you
No.
think you're moving forward and you're propelling forward, that's great. You can go backwards and forwards. You can even be linear for a while, but it's like, well, but what do you want your journey to look like? I mean,
well, and I will tell you, looking back on the last 20 years since I've left, in March, it'll be exactly 20 years.
wow.
We did build a new past.
Yeah.
We have great memories of the kids being in sports and going in high school and having friends and having our own life back, and having that life outside of abuse and toxicity is wonderful.
And I would imagine you being an advocate, you know, after you went to that one retreat and then you get involved with things and you're in the media or what have you, you know, I would imagine that's been part of a healing journey.
It has been. And that's funny that you say that. So I started doing speeches, or I've done a couple in other states. I mainly around here. I would also, and this was before I worked in the media, I would do interviews with the media. I reached out to them.
Yeah.
One of the things I have learned about being in the media is that it is a very difficult thing for a survivor to want to talk about it. Especially in the media. Now, and the media nowadays is way worse than it ever was. And I don't mean mainstream media, I mean social media. You know, mainstream media and local media are very, very aware of boundaries with domestic violence and survivors and victims' family. Doesn't mean that they can't still be intrusive, because they are, but that's probably not going to change. But I feel like there's like, and I worked very, very hard at the agency that I work with now to streamline how we report incidents. And you know, there was a woman, just the other day, I saw a story on our website and I was like, why is her name in this story?
Yeah.
Because they reported the sentencing of a man who had kidnapped a woman, and her name was in the story. And I immediately, because I work for corporate, so I don't actually have any say in what happens locally, but I see it in the local station. I went over to my friends and I'm like, what is this?
Yeah. What are we doing here?
And they said that she wants to share her story.
Yeah.
And that's when that is okay, right? But the normal person reader, they'll get on there and they'll be like, this station sucks, they're naming the victim, blah, blah, without recognizing what we would go through to protect that person. But an absolute imperative healing journey was telling my story. I got better at it. I did it in school. I did speeches in school. I got, like I told you before, sometimes I feel like I'm just telling somebody else's story. But it absolutely was a phenomenal healing journey. It is not for everybody. It is very difficult.
And you're a little bit more public about it. And I don't think that everyone has to share their story like you are, but when we do share it and get it out of our kind of our head, you know, out of our head, it looks different when we get it out of our head. We can observe it differently, but it also validates.
Even if that means sharing the story with
I tell people, write it in your journal. That's
write it in a journal. It is getting it out.
It's getting it out, and it's also validating. Like, I am witnessing my own life on paper.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, this did happen. I'm not going to pretend like it didn't.
Right.
What it felt like. And this is all the alls and all the feelings. Right. And so I think and that's what therapy's for. Like, I'm not one to say that, I don't, by and large, I'll say this. I don't think therapy hurts anybody. That
I don't think so.
I have had clients come to me and tell me some wackadoodle things that an off-track therapist has said or requested. And I'm like going, oh, I'm so sorry that was your experience, because that's not what it's about. But I would say that if you want to process, going to a therapist or a counselor could be a good place, because it's non-judgmental.
Yeah.
They might have some tools that are going to help you with any kind of emotional residuals, or you to process. Like, that happened when I was 24, but you know what? When I was younger, I think this is why I made choices when I was 24 or whatever, right?
How do you connect the dots?
like with your second husband, I'm like going, oh my gosh, wouldn't that have been great if he could have done some work on his past that could help him shift, right?
Right.
Things were 100% stuck with inside him, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But mostly it's like, it just helps you in a non-threatening way, maybe get to where you want to be more quickly. Do I think people can heal by sharing this story with a friend? Absolutely. Do I think you can heal with a journal writing? Absolutely.
And it depends on who you are and what you're comfortable with. Yeah. I'm a very, and I've always been this way. I'm a very outspoken extrovert. And I think that's why that is part of my journey, is advocating and speaking out, because I could I could do a TED talk and I would not break a sweat, right? But there are so many other people. I've done a bazillion news interviews, even where I work. And it doesn't make me nervous, but that is not for everybody.
You also transitioned the narrative. Because at one time, I'm a little bit embarrassed. I'm in shock. I might be kind of ashamed that this has happened to me. And you're like, oh, I don't feel that way. And others be like, I can't, because I do.
But society's helped change that too, because we have all shifted the way that we feel about victim blaming. We educated our public a lot about, if you're in it right now and you are dealing with this right now, it's hard to see outside of that until you're outside of that. So that is where that's, women or men that are in these relationships, they can't go to a therapist. They can't talk to their friends. They're often isolated. They don't want to tell their parents because they're not ready to leave. And I've had so many parents who have come to me and said, how do I get my child out of this situation? And I said, you cannot.
You don't.
The only thing that you can do is tell them that you are there for them. And when they are ready, and that you hope that it is before
I'm available without the I told you so's.
You cannot, it is so imperative. You cannot disseminate their spouse, their partner, because they will shut you out. They don't want to hear how much you hate that person or how bad that person is.
But also it's not about them. It's about, you need support. I'm supporting you. I don't need to.
No,
they don't have to talk about that.
It's so common for a father to be like, I'm going to kill him, or I'll do this or whatever. And then that daughter is like, yep, that door's closed. And then they blame themselves if something catastrophic happens, right? Because they shut them off. And that's just that's a bad journey for anybody. And you never, and I know people that are there and they're still there, and they're, they have a very hard time not thinking that they could change that dynamic. But the problem is that once somebody is in that relationship, it is nowadays, it's a little different. Back in the early days, it was normal to be with a man. And I'm talking 50s, 40s, who controlled everything about everything, right? Yeah. We don't have that same dynamic, but we also still have that. We need to hide more because everything is public, like everything, like anything, like, and people, I have seen people post on social media, a friend of theirs, and saying, I want to get help for this person. What are you doing? You know what I mean? And so it's like, privacy is such a hard thing to come by in this day and world. And so people in these abusive situations will hide it more, they'll retreat more, and they'll talk less. And there are ways of helping those people, but the biggest help you can do is just be there and make sure that they're aware that you are there for them when they are ready. Now, they may still deny that there's anything going on.
That's right.
But you can just say, listen, I don't know what's going on. You don't feel to me like you are happy with where you're at in this life with whatever's going on. And I want to know how
like, I don't know, but it looks as though you're not happy.
You're not happy.
As though, you've called me every day, every third week, you call me crying because, and you can still do, you totally can, but also, I just want you to share, like, this is what it looks like. I'm not saying, and I would hate for someone to say that and they go, oh, no, I don't want to call you. But
and that happens too. But what you
in the right way, there's like, well, no,
what you can say in that particular situation is that I want your life to someday not be full of this.
Yes.
Crying all the time, sadness,
Yeah.
unhappiness, whatever in your world is causing this. How do we move through it? And I've used this with my own kids as far as saying, there's a compatibility issue. And when you're young, it's really hard to see that God didn't just like plop everybody down on this earth and say, hey, you're all meant to be together. Just figure it out.
Right.
Find a partner. We all have different likes and interests and different personalities. And it is okay to say, listen, I think you're a great person, but I don't think you're the right person for me.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to be a good fit. You
No.
could be, man, you're super attractive. You're super funny. We're not a good fit. It's okay.
Our parenting styles are different, or our cleaning styles are different.
And P.S., you don't even have to have an explanation.
No,
It can
that's
be
true. Yeah.
I'm not feeling it. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just not there. There's no, whatever that is, it's not there. It's
empowering
okay.
yourself, empowering other people
Yeah.
to move past whatever it is that's going on in their life right now that is making them unhappy. That is without pointing fingers, blaming the other person, because that is so counterproductive to helping somebody.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I mean, we all have agency and we all have to have responsibility. And if someone hits or is verbal abusive, to me, it's never going to be my issue. It's always going to be their issue.
Sure.
And my issue will be me. And do I stay or go? And to be clear, no one is shame. If you choose to stay, and if you're listening to this, or someone who is listening, or refer to someone to listen to this, if they choose to stay, they choose to stay.
Right.
If they choose to go, they choose to go. And there are resources, and even if you're in the littlest town that doesn't have one therapist, doesn't have one anything, you can go to the police station. Or a hospital. They are all equipped with these emergency hotline numbers that you can go to. And just so people know, like when, this is a podcast, but when I post the podcast, there's usually like, here's information for you. Or like if they're watching it on YouTube, there will be a national hotline number for them. I mean, I can't do every state and every city, obviously.
No, but if you just do the national one, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, it will refer them to their state's hotline.
It'll get you connected to be right where you want to be.
Yeah,
there are some amazing resources like Crime Victim, and they will make sure if you have kids that medically they'll be fed, and they will often. There's so many programs out there. When I lived in Utah like 30 some years ago, and I don't know so much about it now because I'm not in the domestic arena like I used to be, like it was 30 years ago. But they actually have places where like you and your kiddos can stay there for X amount of months, and they will help train you, dress you, to get you jobs and to get you on your feet again.
Yeah, and I advocate with an organization called Passionate Wings, and we are developing programs and resources to help guide people to the right ones, right? So like you come to us and we sit down and we figure out what it is that works best for you. What do you need? Do you need a divorce? Do you need childcare? Do you need welfare? Do you need, do you need help going back to school? Do you need to expunge your criminal record? Do you need, do you need addiction help? Do you need, and we help facilitate you to the right agencies and the right organizations.
Right. You said
that's kind of a Passionate Wings has been around for a while. It's a warehouse of women's accessories, clothing for people who need that. We get referrals through case managers. That's kind of where that's
broadening like your ability
to kind of broaden, and we're working, and that's currently where we're evolving into these resources.
That's local in Utah, but my guess is that this is like a nice pilot, and my guess is
exactly what it is. Yes, we have, we have people that want to work with us to expand throughout the country. So, and that doesn't mean I tell people break the silence is definitely a countrywide thing, but where they've connected with me and they want to move to New Jersey. So then I connect to somebody I know in New Jersey, and then we work together. So it's something that somebody wouldn't necessarily know how to do. Right. So,
Right.
It's important to understand that there are resources. And I also understand that you might be ready today and you might call me today and I might talk to you today. And by the weekend, you've changed your mind. I fully understand what that feels like. And that is no judgment. That is expected in some situations. And we're still going to be there for you when you make the next decision, right? Like just because you started the journey with us and you changed your mind doesn't mean that when you find your footing that you can't.
And it's crazy how powerful one phone number can be.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. One phone number can change everything, whether it's 911 or the hotline or
211.
Right. And so like it's amazing how powerful it can be.
It is.
So I have a question before, I know we're winding down. Thank you so much for sharing your story, but also all the other things that, you're very transparent and very vulnerable. You're like, when P.S. I didn't make all my steps weren't on crystal.
Right. Absolutely not.
They were talking about that shifting sand, right? And I go, no, I love sand for a little bit.
Yeah.
Shifting sand.
Very messy. It was a messy journey.
Yeah. Well, and it's a beautiful mess, right? I mean, here we are now.
Mine.
So this is kind of a big question. I ask a lot. It's not everyone, but when I remember, I ask this.
Okay.
What you know now, right? And who you were at, like that 17-year-old in that first relationship, even before you were in the relationship, whatever time slot, knowing what you know now and all the journey you've been in, what would you say to that teenager? What advice, thoughts? I don't know.
I would tell that teenager to learn about herself first. Grow, and my girls have been pretty good about this in their journeys. Getting involved in a relationship really young doesn't allow you to learn about yourself as an adult.
Yeah.
Because I was in a relationship. I was in a toxic relationship by the time I turned an adult. And so I learned how to be an adult through toxicity, which really messed up the footing and the foundation that I knew as a teenager. And going into that, I never, ever in a million years thought I would land in the journey that I went down. Never. Yeah. And so I would really just say, if I could rewind the clock and go back to being 17 again, it would be to take the time to learn about yourself and about life before you could get into a relationship. And I get it. I get some people meet in high school. But
that doesn't take the fact away that what you're saying. The advice is still true. You can be in a relationship and that's my person.
Yeah.
However,
still learn about yourself.
The relationship you create with yourself will be the most powerful.
I like me. I like who I am. I mean, I don't always like some of the things I might either say or do or whatever in the moment, but I, for the most part, can go back and say, but what's so interesting is I can rewind the clock to pre-17. Mm-hmm. And I can say that 16, 15, 14-year-old, that is exactly who is in my core now. Because I was very independent. I was a dancer. I was a cheerleader. I was in DECA and FBLA. I was driven. I was going places. I was working. I was taking care of a family,
Yeah.
And then I lost my footing. Right. So like I kind of reiterated that who I was back then is who I was meant to always be. I just took the long way to get there as an adult. Right. Like as an adult, I just took the long way around and a couple of detours and bad forks in the road. But I got back there.
Yeah, we often do. But I like the, create a healthy relationship with yourself, then the other relationships will follow.
100% in every relationship that you have.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being with us, guest. And we gave, I think it'll be about a couple of hours. I think it'll be a great listen to. And again, encouraging anybody who needs to call if you choose to. Know that number is always there. And if you know anyone that you think could benefit from the life lessons that were shared or the phone numbers that will be shared, then please send this to them so that they can hear someone else's journey and know that they're not alone, and that if they choose to, there's a way to shift their shift.
Never alone, never ever alone. There's somebody out there that's been through what you're going through.
Yeah. And again, we at Life You Got This here, and all the guests that we have on this show, we do appreciate the time that you spend with us and spending it together, because we know your time is precious. And we'd like to leave you with remembering this is your life. You got this. Have a good rest of your day.